Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. XtraHop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/XtraHop. Workloads protected by VMware are the safest workloads in the multi-cloud. Private cloud, public cloud, any cloud. Stronger, with distributed protection to the API and everything east-west, inside, and cross-cloud. Stronger, with 3 layers of detection, trusting nothing and seeing everything, even the best hidden bad actors. Stronger, with an SE Labs AAA certified advanced NDR that brings the multi-cloud together for the win. You've got workloads, we've got security. VMware Security. Simply stronger. Visit securityweekly.com/VMware to learn more.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. Also, keep an eye out for some new podcasts we might have showing up pretty soon. I'm sure we'll do some announcements on those once they're ready. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. Also, we had an absolute blast putting together this last year's Security Weekly Unlocked virtual event. All presentations are available on demand for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/unlocked. Now, on to the Enterprise Security Weekly news. So, Tyler, Katie, I think unicorns are off the endangered list at this point. I think that goes without saying.
Yeah. We just need a new category. We've had to adjust, just like, buying eggs is $5 per dozen. These crazy valuations and these crazy funding amounts, I think we're just going to have to get used to them.
So let me throw a question to you, Adrian. If unicorns are off the table and unicorns are kind of just the way life is now, should we be focusing on predicting, analyzing, finding, or determining the first unicorns that have to take down rounds? The ones that have to then admit that they were wrong and taking so much crazy amount of money?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with so many unicorns, we have to look at other ways of evaluating these companies too. And it's tough because they're private. Like, we don't get to see their revenue. We don't get to see their customer count. Sometimes based on how the product works, there's clever ways of finding out some of the information, seeing how much market, how good they are at engaging and getting traction in the market. Sometimes you can go in social media, and see how much buzz they're getting, naturally, not just their marketing team going out and blasting stuff out there. No offense or anything, but yeah, I mean, we need some other way of evaluating these companies at this point, because the numbers we're looking at, clearly, it's not a multiple of ARR or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't know how we evaluate them anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't have a good answer to that.
Yeah, I don't either. That's the thing. It's almost like it's ceasing to become a business metric and has turned into a vanity metric, right? Whoever can hold the most money, have the biggest valuation, pump the biggest ego, etc.
I certainly haven't done the math, but it would be interesting for someone to sit down and see what the multiples on these are averaging, and try to look at category. We were just talking about attack surface management. Is that getting valued higher than, I don't know, some other category?
Yeah, the heart.
Geography, is it, certain type of company are, for instance, are founders who come from really big companies more successful than founders who grew up in an internal department in Microsoft, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I would say good chunks of that data analysis has already been completed. The harder part, though, is getting revenue numbers from, my phone's going bonkers, sorry about the beeping, is getting revenue numbers for privately held companies. So it's harder to do this for unicorns because they're privately held. Many of them don't disclose their revenue. So it's almost impossible to get some of the metrics at that level. Now, we could easily do it for public companies because they're required by SEC regulation to publish all those metrics for us, and we could back into a lot of that information post-public, but private's just a different world.
Yeah, and I think
it's hard enough to get even a real customer count on a lot of these customers too. So I assume that the VCs have better insight, but they're probably not going to disclose that kind of data either.
No way. They're not incented to. They're not incented to disclose that information in any way, shape, or form either. And they're probably, from fiduciary responsibility to the business, they're not going to disclose it simply by the fact that they're not allowed to.
I think you're totally right about it being a vanity metric too, but it becomes more than that. It becomes almost like a KPI goal, because once you can say that you're a unicorn, that helps you kind of self-realize that goal, right? Like, that's really good marketing. As a new company, you're looking to, to give potential, prospects confidence in the company, and what's better than saying we're worth over $1 billion? Like that's a pretty good metric for confidence there. So now that just becomes like a milestone on the company growth, so if they need to, hey, we need our valuation to be $1 billion. What do we need to do to be able to have that press release? I'm sure it's happening much easier now that it's kind of viewed that way as I think like a milestone for the company to hit.
Absolutely. And so which news articles do we have any news articles with the new birth of our one-horned friends?
Yeah. So the first one, I think 1Password was already a unicorn.
Oh, they were definitely.
But I think I do have a partial answer to your question, though. I think based on what we can see, I think it's going to have to be those down rounds. It's going to have to be acquisitions. It's going to have to be comps. Like we're going to have to wait, for the stuff that we can see, to be able to, I don't think there's any way to do it at this point, with these. I think we're at 41 unicorns in InfoSec.
Well, here's the counterpoint, Adrian. Are we in just a new era where, again, thanks to inflation, market dynamics, et cetera, where, just deals are this size now. Like, we're going to have to, as a market, figure out how to handle this. Like, Microsoft just acquired Activision yesterday or the day before yesterday for something like $68 billion for a video game company. Holy smokes. Like, is that the new norm? Is 1 billion just a baby number in today's economy?
But yes, that
could be the new reality.
Microsoft is a $2 million market cap. You've got to keep in mind, Call of Duty makes $5 million a day, every day. It's not like a movie where they make $5 million or a certain amount of millions on opening weekend and then it trails off. That's year round, every year. And, like Call of Duty alone, I think is 1.8 billion in revenue a year. So 68 billion is 7.5x on revenue for them. So it's not even a huge multiple. Because they got the scandal discount.
Yeah, I don't want to come across as the guy that's always like, oh my God, overinflated. Maybe. I just might also be out of touch with the current pricing, right? With the current expectations of what is going to be the new era for the next 10 years. So I think there's an easy argument to be made on the flip side of that coin as well.
There are people saying that it's contracting. And I think we can all agree that, this is not something that can continue forever. Like they can't, all 41 of these unicorns can't IPO, so I think what we might see is some new changes in where they go from there. I don't know if they stay private. I don't know if PE shops are the answer here. We'll see more PE shops kind of shifting towards the security space and being that kind of post VC exit that these companies need. I don't know.
And that's my ringer. You can ignore that.
No, it's I literally had some notes here that I wanted to have this conversation. So I'm glad you launched into it because I was going to anyway.
Well, it's something I'm passionate about, so it's an easy topic for me, Adrian.
Yeah, you're coming up again because your name is actually in some of these press releases.
Oh no! Don't do this to me! Don't call me out. And I have to turn off the stupid ringer. It's going do not disturb mode right now.
Okay. So yeah, 1Password. This one's huge. I think it's partially because they're B2C and B2B. They started out as entirely consumer, and I think coming up with enterprise products has really helped them. They're in the right place at the right time, I think, to kind of jump on that bandwagon. But this is one of the few truly huge security unicorns at $6.8 billion valuation, where I think it's somewhat deserved. 1Password was bootstrapped for a long time, so they've got really solid ARR. They not somebody who just came out of nowhere with a marketing campaign, and a year later, they're claiming to be a unicorn. So I do like that we're seeing. It feels a little bit more deserved here, but yeah, the $620 million they raised is only a Series C, partially because they were bootstrapped for so long. So they didn't start getting investments until they're already an established company.
Yeah, that's just a successful result. I think, it's interesting to me. I look at a lot of companies quite frequently, and what I don't see enough of is those that solve a problem with a very simple solution. And when you can do that, you can make a massive, massive company. And that's what these guys did. 1Password solves a problem with a simple, straightforward solution that just works. And, there's something to be said for, hey, I got the latest AI, I got the latest this, the latest that, the latest innovation. But if you can't make that easy to use and simple and straightforward for your buyer, you're not going to win. And they did a really good job of solving that problem.
When your sales cycle is 1 day,
that helps.
you can do some impressive stuff. So they say they're going to spend some of this on acquisitions. So kind of curious if you guys have any guesses on. I'm thinking maybe they go the zero trust route, deeper into MFA, API security, maybe. But
gosh, there's so many different ways they can play that. Go ahead, Katie. You go first.
Passwordless.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, there's
1Password, but passwordless would make sense as an augmentation. Employee verification, things of that nature, sort of tying it all into the whole passwordless journey. And especially with hybrid workforces and the way the world's going, providing lots of different options. I mean, we've definitely not seen the death of passwords that people have been either predicting or hoping for the last 15 years or so. But it's more likely, and with workplaces as remote and as distributed as they are, this would definitely make I think a good play, both passwordless and the employee verification. I just went to a doctor's appointment yesterday, and they did a whole online verification, document verification thing, and I felt pretty confident in it. And I can't necessarily say I would have felt that way 2 years ago, sending pictures of my driver's license and medical insurance card and things of that nature. But some of these solutions are pretty good, and it would be more of a platform than 1Password has right now.
Yeah, I would say that is an absolute great view. I think MFA is another natural view to push into trying to own more of that. I think permission sprawl is another interesting component. I think cloud permissions is interesting, right? Starting to go beyond authentication and focusing on authorizations, permissions, tracking, all of those kinds of services from an enterprise level.
Yeah. It seems like there's they probably have enough money to do both, but they could go deeper into what they already do. Like I like the passwordless guest there, or something adjacent. With which I think the permissions authorization stuff would be a good adjacent move for them. All right, Devo announces $250 million in funding and looks small compared to some of the other stuff. It's like, it's. I think it's a Series E, something like that. Obviously, it's not small. I mean, that's still a really big raise. Valuation is $1.5 billion. So I don't know. Maybe we have 42 unicorns in security. I don't know.
They're a baby unicorn.
But sorry, Katie, what was that?
Said they're a baby unicorn if they're only 1.2 billion.
That's hilarious. Yeah, now we have baby unicorns. Oh boy. Yeah, so I mean, good growth. I think they started off. Their pitch was discount Splunk, and I think that's changed somewhat. Now that they're more mature, and I don't know what the exit looks like for a SIM, that or a log management solution at this point. I think they tend to be a little bit more stable than other security companies out there. So I could see somebody like a Devo eventually going public.
And not at a 1.5 billion valuation in today's world. They got a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is Series E, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe acquisition exit, maybe private equity. Who knows? Private equity tends to. I don't think they match what PE shops are usually looking for right now. Sorry, Katie.
I just said it's a lot of debt. So many of these companies, so much debt.
Yeah. We've got a few other here. I haven't jumped real deep into. We've got Germany. SoSafe raised $73 million in a Series B to address human error in cyber. One trend that I liked in some of these press releases is they're getting really creative, and this is the first of two news stories we have in here. It's worth a click to the TechCrunch article for Germany SoSafe. This is article number, what is it? 3 on our list here. The whole thing is done like a rave. It's advertised like a rave or something like that. Like they're standing in front of DJ equipment,
it's like an album
with the, like an album with it says new album, Human Firewall, out now. It's very clever. It's very creative. I think better than the usual, hey, let's all line up on the front steps and take a group photo.
I think that tees up a very interesting discussion about cyber marketing, cybersecurity related marketing, and how difficult it is to stand out in the noise that is cybersecurity, right? And it used to be the funding announcements were so rare, you didn't have to pull any tricks. You could just put your people on the front page. There you go. People would cover it because it was $20 million raised or $50 million raised. And now, because the numbers are so enormous, you have to do something to stand out in that crowd. And it's similar to the problem cybersecurity marketing people in general face across the board, is how do you stand out in such a noisy, overinflated situation? And so, I give them kudos. As we always pick on companies that their press releases use buzzwords or whatever. You don't understand what they're doing. You know what? I give these guys kudos for going outside the box, doing something different. It caught our eye and made us talk about them, which is exactly what the goal of it was.
Yeah. And I've got to say, this very easily could have been heavily cringeworthy, and it's not. They did a pretty good job at nothing on the design or the photo, makes me want to close the tab as quickly as possible. I think it actually did a decent job of it.
So, I would say it's on the edge, Adrian.
What's that?
It's on the edge, but the point is valid for sure, Tyler, that it's really hard to stand out. In the first segment, we were talking about attack surface management, and yes, I know that there's a definition, but it's been bastardized by so many companies. Everybody takes these buzzwords and molds them to whatever suits. And so the market itself is just so fuzzy. So you do have to stand out. But that balance of being on the edge of cringeworthy is, it could fail miserably. But what's the alternative? Having another, going to another conference when we finally get back to conferences and having another coffee bar or whatever the case may be, something that is just so standard. You can't go so over the top that people are like, what the hell is this? But in this case, this company, they're in Germany. They're known for a pretty big techno scene. They're sort of tying it together, maybe a little loosely, but it is different. And with even the words that we use to describe our vendor companies in security, so similar and so convoluted and so mushed together, there has to be something. You can't go over the top and do something stupid and make yourself look ridiculous, because then people are going to be like, no, this company isn't taking themselves seriously. Why should I take their tech seriously? Mm-hmm. But the industry is almost pricing itself out, pricing in quotes, itself out of standard marketing.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic. I think we could do an hour segment on this alone, given Katie's and my connection to marketing and cybersecurity. But I was recently privy to a thread on a Cybersecurity Marketers Society Slack that I'm part of, where somebody said that their CEO was telling them they had to do TikToks. And it was like,
oh, okay, no.
How do I? But here's the interesting thing. A couple of the comments were, "Oh, dumbest thing ever. CEO should never ask that." And a couple were comments, and this is kind of my side of it, is, what's the danger there? What if you did one or two and saw whether there was an ROI? I think the reality of cybersecurity marketing today is you have to be willing to try new things, and you just have to be open and authentic to your voice, whatever your voice is. And if your voice is like super stodgy gov commentary, then stick to that voice. But a lot of them now, like a lot of us, we err on the side of, hey, let's just go have fun, talk about some fun stuff, and it's resonating better and chopping through the clutter.
Well, and it's so cheap to try. Why wouldn't you? I mean, in the past, like if you're taking a chance on an RSA booth, on like a theme or something you're thinking of doing for RSA, like you got to make peace with that, because it's another year before the next RSA. But TikTok, you're just putting some of your time into it, and give it a good go. In a couple of weeks, generally you're going to know if it's working or not, and you can just kind of cut your losses.
Exactly. Low risk, but probably low return, but some potential to maybe catch fire. So give it a go. The trick is not coming off as cheeky, too insincere to who you are and to your audience. And if you can do that, you're in good shape.
Well, and I think the other thing, one more key to it, because I saw this in a company I used to work with some of the marketing team. Their whole goal was to go viral. And this one person, it was one person, not the whole marketing team. The whole goal was to go viral. And if that's the goal, you're already doing it wrong. Your whole goal should be one conversion into a sale. It will pay for itself. Almost any campaign, if you make one sale, but it should not be to blow up on TikTok or Instagram or, back then it was Twitter. It should absolutely, like you said, be authentic to your brand, to your voice, and serve the purpose of getting a sale. It can't just be, well, I'm going to be another Kardashian.
Yeah. I mean, if you're B2C, it's different, right?
Right.
Go. I think it's more valuable, going viral is a bit more valuable there.
Viral goes viral based on interesting content. That's what viral is in that world, right? So, I think your goal should be to create interesting content that generates brand recognition, awareness, and hopefully converts into an eventual sale. And if you go viral, it's a byproduct, not an intention.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You said it way better than I did.
Yeah, same. So the other one here, so to bookend with the interesting content here that grabs you, Permiso is the other one. If you go to permiso.io, you can immediately see, this stands out from, other websites you've seen. Even the press release, which, only has a single image on it. It really stands out the brand the whole brand standard here, basically. And this one, Tyler, if you want to tell us a little bit about, well, before we leave the previous one, SoSafe, Germany's SoSafe is basically like a know-before competitor. I think that new album, Human Firewall, pretty much tells you everything you need to know about what they do. But Permiso, I don't know a whole lot about yet, but I suspect Tyler knows more.
I do know a fair amount, as I am an investor in Permiso. It's really focused on cloud-based detection and response, primarily focused on authentication authorization issues. That's the differentiation. That's the core offering. I can't give the pitch. I'm definitely not a pro at the pitch. I haven't worked with them at that level. But to your point, I wanted to bring up if you go to the Permiso, Permiso.io, you go to Permiso.io, you'll see the brand creation that they have going on. And it's exactly to my point that I was making on the former article. If you know the guys, if you know Paul and Jason and the crew over there, you know that this is their person. This is totally true to who those guys are. Fun, interesting, lighthearted, don't take themselves too seriously, but want to set out to build something amazing. And when you look at Permiso.io, you look at the core webpage, that's exactly how it comes across, right? I mean, they use fun visuals. They use right there on the main page, in parentheses, we are not a CSP. I'm like just calling out direct, fun commentary about markets. They have little hidden gems of, like a little burglar guy, little hacker burglar guy embedded in the cloud. It's just a really, really cool vibe. And I think the reason why it resonates for me, and it may not resonate for everybody, but here's the thing, they're being true to who they are, which means I don't think they can fail when it comes to the marketing brand here.
Yeah, agreed. Especially when part of that branding is being clear and straightforward, like that, it's just always appreciated. I've never understood the style where it's like, well, let's hide what we do in as many layers of buzzwords as possible. Not that that's the goal they're going after, but at some point somebody needs to read that and say, what the hell is this saying? Like I don't know what we do, much less anybody else. Like we need to change this, but doesn't happen.
Yeah, at the top of the about page, the headline is "How We Roll." I love that, and it's got like fists pumping. You can't beat that. It just is. It's really cool.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I can't remember the last time I saw a vendor website with a fixed width font as their default font, which I love
for sure. There,
it's very readable. Like very quickly you can find what you're looking for in this website. Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, getting a lot of things right there. Definitely a case study in how to do a press release and how to do marketing when launching a company there for anybody that needs a reference.
Yeah. And the net on that article, the net on that article.
They don't have a marketing person on staff yet.
No, they don't. They're actually looking for marketing. So if there's marketing leaders who are watching this and are interested, please feel free to reach out to me. I can make the introduction appropriately. But the net on this article is they did a $10 million, I believe they're calling it a seed, a $10 million seed with Rain Capital Foundation 11.2, a handful of angels, including myself, Jason Chan, a bunch of other, Caleb Sima, a bunch of other very notable angels have gotten behind them. And I think they're well poised to come out firing. So I'm pretty excited for them to hop out of stealth this week.
I have a really important question, Tyler, for you about how you make investment choices. You hate chocolate.
Yes.
And Jason says right on his bio that his favorite thing, one of his two favorite things is chocolate. How did you pick this company? It seems like a complete mismatch.
So it's an excellent question, and I have a two-part answer. The first part is I pick my companies using a dartboard and a dart. That's literally how I pick my companies.
Excellent.
And so far, my accuracy has been really not very good, but I'm working on it and trying to get better. The other side of that storyline is I have known Paul Nguyen for over 20 years. I haven't known Jason nearly as long. I invested in Paul. I really don't like Jason. No, I'm just kidding. He's a great guy other than his love and affinity of chocolate, which I just don't understand.
I don't know what Rita's gelatis is, but I would be interested to learn about that from Paul.
He's trying to come across smarter than he is. We'll not worry about that.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I love those guys. I'm totally playing. They're great guys. I look forward to seeing this company do very well.
All right. So next on the list, we've got Verica, which is interesting. We've seen a few companies in this category, but they call it continuous verification, but it kind of comes across as like a fuzzing tool, so kind of like an extension of vulnerability management, except the goal here is to make stuff fall over. So the goal is SRE, more resilient systems. So yeah, I think it's interesting that you can buy a tool to do this now. Basically, just like a flamethrower, you can you can turn on your products and infrastructure.
Yeah, no, Verica is a really interesting company. Good friend of mine, James Wickett, works there. The entire, I don't want to say the entire because I have not had a briefing from them in quite a while, but I do want to say that my understanding is that it is focused on chaos, what they call chaos engineering, which is literally what you're describing. Adrian, chuck a flamethrower at your environment and determine if it can withstand that flamethrower, right? Shake it, make it go through earthquakes, make it go through flamethrowers, make it go through a truck running it over, right? Can it actually withstand the chaos that is reality? So I think conceptually it's a really neat idea, and they've been at it for a little bit now, and good for them on the progress and announcements that they're making. I love James, and I wish him the best of luck as well.
Yeah, you remember Slashdotting back in the day? Like, it was both the best and worst thing that could happen to a company, because if your website showed up in Slashdot, you'd get all that click through, just like literally millions of people in 10 minutes, would just have Slashdot up and be refreshing the page. And it was so rare that companies could withstand that assault. Like almost always, Slashdotting meant that your site went down, that too many people hit your site and it couldn't handle the load. And of course, this is pre-cloud or anything like that, and if there was any kind of auto-scaling technology out there, most companies didn't have it or use it. But
it's really interesting, this whole concept of chaos engineering, continuous verification. It really lends itself now to the way that modern systems and applications are architected, in the sense that they're actually designed to be completely resilient. And if you can get to a high enough level of resiliency, then the chaos becomes irrelevant, right? And I think that's lending itself well and giving rise to site reliability engineering type roles, type expertise, the ability to architect and to design something in a cloud native way that can withstand anything. And I think it's a really cool way of building applications from the bottom up.
Is this a little bit of an expansion of breach and attack simulation plus pen testing on steroids, built with the purpose of testing resilience and reliability?
That's a really interesting analogy, Katie. Like, I don't think I ever made that leap in my brain, because I think that the difference is it's not just an outward facing attack and breach simulation in the sense that it's looking to breach things. It's more, what if your API went down within your system, or what if your internal API got flooded with a bunch of garbage? It's not just an outside view, it's actually chaos from within the application and within the system as well, which I think it gives it a holistic view, making SRE a very, very important way to build things.
Yeah, I think another way of looking at it is you're probably not going to have the security team shopping for or buying a chaos engineering product. It's probably going to be more out of like a DevOps team or cloud engineering team, I would say. Or wherever your SREs are. I'm not sure where SREs live.
Yeah, I think it ends up being all of the above. That's the interesting thing. Like, I don't think they're going to sell only to security, although I'm sure security will look into it and want purchase of it, but engineering could want it, architecture could want it. Like, there's a lot of different groups that could demand this.
Mm-hmm.
If they're big enough, they have a business continuity group, they'll want part of it.
Sure.
All right, moving on. Tromzo raised a $3 million seed funding round, and I'm not sure I fully grok what they're doing here. We see some similar names investing here as far as individuals go. They say more than 25 leading CISOs, including Caleb. How do you say his last name? I thought it was Seema.
So did I, but the funny thing with Caleb, I've known him for 20 years, calling him Caleb Seema. He only corrected me last year that it's Seema.
Oh, yeah. Man. So yeah, he's invested in this one as well. So yeah, apparently I didn't know that there was Silicon Valley CISO investments. That CISOs could go through to do this. I assume it eases the paperwork on them to invest in stuff.
But, I'm assuming this is. I haven't read the full. Is it the Silicon Valley Angel Group that did it? The Silicon Valley CISO Angel Group.
Yeah, it's
Silicon Valley CISO Investments.
Yeah, if it's the one I think it is, it's a group of CISOs that came together to form an angel syndicate, and they do their own deal review, their own due diligence, and then as a group they decide whether they want to. Silicon Valley CISO Investments, whether they want to invest in that company as a syndicate. And I don't think they're even required to invest as individuals. I think they do all the due diligence and then they make the call on an individual basis whether they want to get involved.
That's interesting. Yeah, so no fund to raise, no LPs, just but you still do some of the stuff that a VC would do, that due diligence.
That's correct. I've actually led angel syndicates. I've done an angel syndicate into a deal as well, where I brought together about 15 angels, and we did a syndicated deal, taking a good chunk of the pre-seed round for a cyber company that is yet unannounced.
Yeah, so it sounds like an AppSec tool. I don't fully understand what they're doing here, but it seems like one of these tools where you both get some visibility from it. You get notified of anomalies or things going out of standard. So kind of a guardrails concept here, and it sounds like they're aiming to make it easier for devs and security folks to work together. So I don't know. I don't know who's buying the product.
I'm all for that, but honestly, I think I don't know much about what they do at all. I won't claim that I do, but that Silicon Valley CISO Angel Group, if they get in, it's usually a very good signal of positivity on the project, because they know what they need. They know what their pain is, right? So they're going to pick the ones that help them the most.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Let's see. So another big news today is STG, Symphony Technology Group, which is the company that acquired McAfee, FireEye, RSA, a ton of other security companies, has spit out a new company based just around McAfee's XDR product. The new company is called Trellix. And they say they're gonna continue doing this. The next one to get spit out will be McAfee's SASE product, which has CASB, SWG, and ZTNA functionality in it. So this is something I didn't really. Usually when you see PE firms pick up a bunch of security companies, they're aiming to slam them together, build an even bigger one, and then IPO that or something like that. So this is kind of new on me. I can't recall seeing the opposite happen, where they take a bunch of big companies and spit them out as smaller companies. But it seems less risky. I don't know.
Maybe not, right? Because if you take the concept of the PE roll-up, where you pull them together, the idea is there that they cross-sell and upsell, and they're able to increase sales across the board, increase efficiencies, decrease extra overhead, right? There's a lot of ways that you can just make the math of the business look better and then drive a higher valuation. The spin out routine is the old school kind of buy it, chop it up, and get value from it model, which is kind of an interesting approach, right? Where it's like buying a shopping mall and then chopping up and leasing out the individual components, although leasing isn't the right analogy, but you get the point, right? You might be able to to get more by buying. Well, it's like buying a plot of land and then chopping it up and selling homes on it, right? You get more on the value of the purchase by having the individual components. So it's not about increasing efficiencies as so much it is kind of having each individual part be worth more than the whole.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning also that before these companies even went to STG, they're already chopped up somewhat and had, that's a trend we've seen, or the consumer portions of some of these security companies, Norton LifeLock, McAfee's consumer side, FireEye got split between the Mandiant side and the FireEye product side. So, more of a services side versus non-services, but they both have services. It's it's not a clean line with that one. But yeah,
before you leave this topic, Adrian, though, I do want to point out that name, and I'm not the one that came up with this, although I did think of it before I saw the picture, is the name 100% reminds me of like a merging between like, Trello and Skrillex, which I just like visually just blows my mind. A picture of Skrillex like doing like Trello work at a company or something. It's the most ridiculous thing ever.
Yeah. That you're not alone. You're not alone. I've heard a few people mention that. Yeah, it's pretty funny. No idea where. I mean, it's better than FireEye or Danger Black or whatever. It's at least it's unique and pronounceable. Moving on, let's see. We talked about Microsoft's enormous acquisition, which isn't really security. It's just more of a included as commentary on the market. The supply chain one. So story number 11. Did you guys have a chance to take a look at this one?
No, that would involve me doing prep work, Adrian, and I'm not good at that.
Yeah, so basically, the GCC compiler, the Fortran component of it, the G4tran, the people that maintain that project, it's like a tiny handful of people. They're really busy. Basically, the age-old story you hear about open source maintenance, and somebody submitted, this. It wasn't a bug. It was compatibility with some standard from 2018 that the compiler did not, they had not been brought up to spec to meet the standard, and they're basically requesting somebody fix it and do it. And it's a story we've all heard where the giant multinational, or the person representing the giant multinational government or consulting with the government is asking that this be done quickly. And they're basically saying, look, we got no money, no resources. Like, you'll get it when you get it and you'll be happy with it. And just a reminder that, open source is still this very, very fragile component, I think, in with security implications as well as, just business implications. Somebody just jumped in there, because nobody had time to do it and offered a patch. And I don't know how much they look at that patch, they squint at that patch, or they just slap it in there and move on with the next thing. I don't know if that person was trustworthy. Who knows? Yeah.
It fully depends on the project and depends on the diligence of the maintainer. My brother's big into, or used to be, I don't think he does so much anymore, but he used to be big into open source, and he had commit bits on, I think, OpenBSD and a bunch of other places. And the reality is I always jokingly say that open source really just means two guys with no money working on a project in their garage. That's really what open source means, with a few exceptions, right? With the exceptions of the major enormous projects that have thousands of people working on them. The vast majority of open source is literally unmaintained garbage. And so when something like this pops up and nothing has ever changed in that code repo for a decade or more, who's the one person you can call on to fix it? That's the underlying question. And do they even have time or care?
Yeah, and the response here, this is what made it into the title of that brought it to my attention, the Y Combinator news link here. in response to, well, are they willing to donate some money or like pay for somebody's time to do this? And the response is, the customer has nuclear weapons. They do not do bounty. And still they're willing to just take this patch. Again, I don't know what level of due diligence goes into looking at that before it gets thrown in, but Fortran runs in a lot of sensitive and critical environments. So I think my favorite metaphor, open source metaphor, is that it's not free as in beer, it's free as in piano. Like, sure, it's free, but it's going to be a heavy lift.
I was wondering where that was going.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like you can get a free piano all day, every day, because people don't want to have to deal with it. They don't want to have to move it.
That makes sense, Adrian. You're not wrong.
So yeah, just because it's free doesn't mean it's easy. Is another way of saying that, I guess. See, number 12 is a great read. It's a very long read, but it's real world, people relating real world stories of how they compromise CI/CD pipelines. Excellent source of scenarios if you need scenarios to go in your environment and do some simulations and see if you would be vulnerable to any of these techniques used to compromise these pipelines. Very good read. From NCC Group, who's always been generous, sharing tools and knowledge. Great blog posts, great tools. Let's see what else we have here. Number 15 was an interesting one. Tyler, I think you might be interested in that, since it's basically, we've seen many books kind of covering the history of hacking, and this report is yet another one. Had a few novel things in it that I have not seen in any of the books I've read. Some novel perspective, but still a good primer. Like if you had somebody coming to do marketing or sales for your company and you wanted to give them kind of like the perspective, the flavor of like the hacking scene and part of the security industry, this would be a good paper to throw at them that they can consume in a few hours.
It's absolutely a phenomenal paper. My biggest concern with this paper is how freaking old it makes me feel. Like, really, I don't like that aspect of it, because I worked with half of the companies in here. I remember the moments that a lot of this stuff happened. So I highly recommend it for a read, especially for younger people that want to hear a little bit about the history of the business, where it came from, how it came out of the kind of a more scene aspect, occult scene aspect of where we were in the 80s and 90s, and even back to the 50s. So definitely recommend giving it a read. I think it's a great free resource versus buying, a history book on the subject. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then I thought I hadn't thought about this in a hot minute, but the Joe Sullivan, who's now the CISO over at Cloudflare, was the CISO at Uber, and if you all remember, a couple years ago, got in trouble for paying a bounty to some researchers. For those listening, I'm doing air quotes with my fingers. But yeah, interesting. So criminal charges here, wire fraud, basically, so some of the same charges that Elizabeth Holmes faced as the CEO of Theranos in the recent trial. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts on whether Joe's going to see jail time or anything like that, but I think this is a very different situation from Theranos. I think it's easy to make an argument that he did something wrong that he should not have done, especially not notifying the right people. But, I don't know if I think it's 3 charges with a maximum of 20 years. I don't know if criminal charges is the right way to handle this, but, maybe the U.S. government's looking to set a precedent.
I do have a perspective on it, and I wrote a blog post about it a while back, and it's hard to say. I'm not an insider. I don't know Joe personally. I don't know the situation in any more depth than anybody else could read if they wanted to allocate a few hours to it. So there's a huge caveat there. But my point of view back then, and I think it remains my point of view now, is that, yes, I understand he's saying that he was just one person within a larger committee, within a larger organization that had the responsibility or even the authority to go and declare a breach or disclose certain things. Let's say that's all true and he was just following the policy and following what he was told by his company. There is the issue that he is or was the chief security officer, chief information security officer, and so he has a responsibility not just to law enforcement, not just to his company, but to himself and to the customers and to the people, the Uber drivers in this particular case, to make sure that he's doing the right thing. Yeah. And even if the company is not doing the right thing, he needed to be doing the right thing. And maybe that meant side channel. And Mark Rash, who's quoted in this article, said it in the article. I actually spoke with Mark for a couple of hours way back before I wrote my blog, and we agree that even if Joe felt that he was hamstrung by his organization, and again, I know nothing about him or the situation, the internal politicking, because internal politicking can be.
We know some of the internal politicking at Uber at the time, and it was not a positive environment.
I'm trying to wash my hands a little clean here, but internal politicking at any company can be really challenging, personally and professionally, and a lot of the times those two things come into massive conflict. But in my opinion, Joe should have at very least have gotten himself a record of what was going on, written it down, taken it to a private lawyer, said, here's what's going on, here's what I know, here's my responsibility as a CISO, here's my responsibility as the person who knows all of these things. And if he didn't do that, just falling back on, hey, I wasn't part of the committee, I don't buy it. I don't buy it, because if you have any kind of moral standards, if you're in security, you say, listen, I know this is wrong. And if my company is going to tell me I'm not allowed to say this or I'm not allowed to do that, it has to be a CYA. Because if you're in security, your job is to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of systems. And that didn't happen. And I'm not victim shaming and saying it shouldn't have happened, because it can happen to anybody. That's not the point. The point was that he did cover it up, whether it was intentionally or because he felt pressured to do so. He didn't have any sort of backup to say, I know this is wrong. I'm not allowed to go out of my chain of command here, but I know this is wrong. And at very least, that's what he should have done. Everything else aside, there's so much more to unpack in this, but at very least, he should have had some kind of auditable trail that he knew that he could show that he knew what he was doing, he knew what he was saying, he knew that this was a problem, he knew the repercussions of it.
So I have a question, and nothing that you said is wrong. You're 100% spot on. I think your commentary is wonderful, but in the article it says prosecutors subsequently filed charges against the two men, the perpetrators of the attack, over the hack of Uber and a later hack against lynda.com, in which they also attempted to extort the business into paying hush money to not make details of the breach public. My question to you guys, both Adrian and Katie, is at what point does bug bounties, external bug bounties, turn into hush money and, covering up a breach? It's such
I think that's the case the point he was trying to make is that, hey, there can be a super fine line here. And there are some people who say that he paid hush money. He reframed it as a bug bounty.
Yeah, so that's my theory as to why I think the government might, be going hard with this, is they don't want to see these bug bounty platforms turn into extortion payment gateways.
Well, that's exactly my point. What does this do to the bug bounty programs that are out there? Like, does it change the dynamics? Now, I know most bug bounty, I believe, and I'm not a CISO. I'm a retired tech guy. I'm out of the tech operations side of the business. I'm in the business side now. But I believe that most of those like bug crowd platforms require the bug bounty people to be pre-registered, sign a bunch of documentation, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that should absolve them from this issue. But I think it's definitely a gray area. And certainly back in 16, 17, whenever this occurred, 15, 16, 17, it was very gray area back then, 7 years ago, as to what constitutes a bug bounty. And this has forever been a question all the way back to the early days of responsible disclosure in the early mid-90s, I remember, right? It's like, well, if I find a flaw, am I an attacker? If I tell you, am I hacking you to have found a flaw? Or when I tell you, am I being a good citizen and getting it reported? And that's just a very gray area. And I know I'll probably get flamed online for even bringing it up as a gray area, but I think there's interesting debates to be had there. I'm definitely not taking either side.
So you can, if you search Casey Ellis and Uber, you can probably find Casey Ellis on several podcasts addressing just that question. He's probably the best person to answer that,
sure.
Being the founder of BugCrowd. But that was absolutely like one of the hot topics of the moment when that came out, because clearly there needed to be more due diligence around, who's on the platform, what their intent is, how they got this data, all that stuff, whether it was consensual. But that was, and I don't think it's clean and dry. I think there's ways that you could still abuse the platforms for this kind of thing, but certainly after this happened, I think they did start looking more closely.
And I think this is probably for the legit bug bounty companies a worst case scenario nightmare. It's something that could end their business if it goes bad. And so they're probably hyper aware of how this could look for them or impact them in the future. If somebody were to suggest that, we're going to hire people who are maybe not legitimate, and then it turns into some kind of a seedy dealing.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on here. Johnny, I think you have a video. So I don't know how closely you guys looked at the squirrel stories, if at all, but this may look like the old Asteroids game, but this is a video of somebody actually shutting down, what do they call them in Kubernetes? Pods. So
That's
this is actually
fantastic.
This is actually connected to a Kubernetes backend, and in that video, that little ship going pew pew is shutting down pods. It has to be if more ops management tools were like that, I'm sure we could attract more people to security.
That's fantastic.
I 100% remember I 100% remember a tool in the earlier Linux days in the mid to early 2000s that was exactly the same thing. It was Asteroids, and you shot processes on your local machine.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
A process manager as yep. That's great.
It was fantastic.
That's probably what it was inspired by then. Nice. The only other one I'm going to ask you to click here is number 19. So if you click the link for the squirrel story number 19, it takes you to a page where you can spend, the drop ended, but I can tell you, this was a $50,000 NFT. And I've been just trying to figure out the NFT space and how people are finding value in it. And I find the details of this interesting. So first of all, I think Autograph is one of the most honest NFT marketplaces out there, saying, hey, look, this is just another form of collectibles. And I totally agree. That makes a lot of sense to me, resonates with me. But I'm still having a hard time seeing how you're going to sell 29 editions. Like, it'd be one thing if you got a life-size bronze statue, because this was $50K for this NFT for all 29 editions of this NFT. And I think to even be able to buy these, you had to buy 2 other cheaper Tom Brady NFTs to even be qualified to buy these 29.
So there's a little known fact, Adrian. The NFT actually stands for not for Tyler.
Not for Tyler. And then you scroll down to Tom Brady college resume, and there's like 5 different tiers of his college resume, and anywhere from like 500 to like 2,000 editions of each one. Like, how is that even collectible? Like in those quantities for what they're wanting to sell it for?
The first one there, the mystery container, has 16,600.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't think these. I don't know. I don't think these are going to be worth anything. Like, I've seen some NFTs where they actually send you something physical. Like when Beeple was selling some of his artwork, you actually got this really cool physical thing in the mail, which was like a tablet that displayed the artwork, and it had like a little hole in it so you could recharge the tablet, and it was encased in like 2 inches of plexiglass. Had holograms, had a placard, like it was something you could put on a shelf. You could point to it. You could say, I supported Beeple, an artist that I really like, and people can, in real life, come and see your NFT. And that makes a little, maybe I'm just being old. I don't know.
So Adrian, let's set up a time. You and I can deep dive this, but without trying to rat hole this conversation too far, I will tell you NFTs come in a handful of different flavors. There's art NFTs, which is, in my opinion, pretty much garbage, right? They're collectibles, exactly what you're talking about. There's NFTs tied to the ownership of physical items. There's NFTs that map to copyright or trademark ownership of something. There's NFTs that map to virtual items, digital items. There's NFTs that map to metaverse land plots. So there's lots of different versions of NFTs. You need to start to think of an NFT as literally a representation of ownership of one thing. That's literally as simple as you could make it.
Well, I call it a digital receipt.
About an NFT metaverse conversation. So
yeah, I usually just refer to it as a digital receipt.
It's an easy way to look at it. Sure.
Yeah, I do have a Zawaba, my Twitter handle .crypto, which, the idea there is, it makes it easier to send and receive money, and it can also be used as your authentication to log on to something. Like, you don't need a username and password anymore. You can use this NFT, for authentication. But yeah, we'll see if that catches on. Since it was something you only buy once, I went ahead and grabbed it just to see what the process was like. And I've got it sitting in a wallet. And yeah.
For what it's worth, I will never buy any Tom Brady anything. So NFT, jersey, it doesn't matter. I'm not buying it.
There are other. Autograph has other sports stars on there. I think DraftKings is getting into this as well. So it's interesting. Nike has a patent on, they call them crypto kickies, NFT-based sneakers.
Yeah, we could talk for hours on this topic. I'm rat hole central, staying out of it.
But we're not going to.
Exactly.
Oh, latest thing. Larry just let me know. Larry, Paul Security Weekly. Larry, why am I blanking on his last name? Pesci. Thank you. Made me aware of CryptoCVEs.com, where you can buy an NFT of a CVE, of a vulnerability.
Ooh, that could be super interesting. So if I'm a researcher, a 0D researcher, I can register my flaw with a CVE, buy the CVE, own the CVE, the rights to use said CVE, maybe potentially, I don't know the legal wrangling, but you could own that and then license it to Tenable, Qualys, et cetera, to be able to report on it.
You probably want to think about coming up with a name and a logo for that vulnerability as well, if you want to maximize that.
Better yet, I'm just going to create the company that sells and registers CVEs for security researchers and middle market. I'll run the market on it.
Yep. It's a weird world, folks. And on on that weird note, Thanks, Tyler and Katie, for joining me today. And thanks to everybody who watched or listened today. We will be back next week. See you then.